This is Bite-Sized Business, the channel where we use metrics and ratios to determine a company's financial health. In this installment, we will be taking a bite into the American consumer giant PepsiCo. Before we dive in, let me take you to your seat and mention this video will have a slightly different pathway than the previous series. The menu. On today's menu is PepsiCo, who trades under the ticker symbol PEP. Today's chef special is an American multinational snack conglomerate who owns brands such as Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Gatorade, Lay's, Doritos, and so many more. In fact, as of 2020, Pepsi owned 23 brands that generated over $1 billion of revenue. While I let you mull over some of the options PepsiCo has to offer, why don't I introduce you to some of the appetizers? Our first choice is the income statement. The most recent information from PepsiCo shows a total revenue of $91.92 billion in the last 12 months. This leads us to an EBITDA number of $16.259 billion and a net income of $9.357 billion. For reference, these numbers equate to roughly the annual output of Kenya, Moldova, and Burundi when compared to revenue, EBITDA, and net income respectively. The second choice on the menu tonight is the balance sheet. The balance sheet comes with assets of $100.5 billion in assets, paired nicely with $80.908 billion in liabilities, and comes with $19.6 billion in shareholder equity. The company also has $45 billion of debt. Our final choice is the signature cash flow statement. This is a customer favorite and comes with $6.2 billion in free cash flow in the last 12 months, which is paired nicely with $1 billion in stock buybacks and $7.1 billion of dividends paid, both numbers within the last 12 months. Taking a look at the shares outstanding chart, we see a drop of 11 million shares since the year's end of 2021. This comes as part of a larger trend with Pepsi, where they have bought back 200 million shares since the year's end of 2009. On to the main course. Tonight we have a three-part main course coming in the forms of yearly statistics, ratios, and a company comparison. Today's company was PepsiCo, and they trade under the ticker symbol PEP. They're in the snack food industry. In the last 12 months did revenue of $92 billion. This is up from its 2023 numbers of around $91.5 billion and its 2022 numbers of $86.4 billion. EBITDA in the last 12 months stood at $16.26 billion, up from $15.75 billion in 2023 and up again from its 2022 numbers of $14.9 billion. Net income stood at $9.35 billion, up from $9 billion in 2023 and up again from its 2022 numbers of $8.9 billion. Total debt sat at $44.6 billion as of Pepsi's most recent report, and assets sat at $100.5 billion. Total liabilities are $81.858 billion, and this leaves us with a shareholder equity of $18.637 billion. Free cash flow within the last 12 months was $6.2 billion. This is down from its 2023 numbers of just shy of $8 billion, but up from its 2022 numbers of $5.6 billion. In the last 12 months, Pepsi has done $1 billion in buybacks, which is flat from its 2023 numbers and down from its 2022 numbers of $1.5 billion. In the same time period, Pepsi has paid back $7.1 billion in dividends to shareholders in the last 12 months. In 2023, they paid out $6.68 billion. In 2022, they paid out $6.17 billion. Take a look at some of the ratios. We can see that Pepsi has a current debt-to-equity ratio of 2.4 and debt-to-EBITDA of 2.75. Pepsi boasts an EBITDA margin of 18% and a net profit margin of 10%. Pepsi's buybacks as a percentage of free cash flow were 16%, and buybacks as a percentage of net income was 11%. revenue CAGR stood at 3%. If you're not familiar, CAGR, or CAGR, stands for Compound Annual Growth Rate, and this just shows the annual percentage growth the company did on average between the first revenue statistic, in this case our 2022 number, and our most recent, which is our TTM number. The EBITDA CAGR was 4%, and the free cash flow CAGR was 5%. Again, that was for Pepsi. If we take a look at the comparisons chart, we can see that Pepsi has a high debt to equity within our range, sitting at 2.4 times. They have a neutral debt to EBITDA of 2.7 times, a neutral EBITDA margin, and what we would consider a high net profit margin. One of the new statistics that I'm looking into this series is capital distribution rank. The capital distribution rank is just a function I created that will take the total distribution of capital back to shareholders within the last 3 years and rank each company on our list. Thus far, Pepsi is in first, as it's the only company that we have mentioned. I've decided to give Pepsi a green light when it comes to financial health, because even though the debt to equity is high, the debt to EBITDA is neutral, and the net profit margin is also high. One of the other factors that led me to give them a green light is their capital distributions. I will get into capital distributions on the next slide in our dessert section. If Pepsi wasn't already sweet enough for you, we do have a dessert section. The dessert section will be specifically sweet to Pepsi shareholders. Total buybacks in the last 3 years came in at $3.5 billion. Their annual buybacks as a percentage of free cash flow is 16%, and the buybacks over net income was 11%. Pepsi has paid total dividends in the last 3 years of around $20 billion. Pepsi's annual dividends versus the annual free cash flow came in at 115%. Pepsi's dividends as a percentage of their net income for the last year was 76%. The total distribution that Pepsi has done over the last 3 years is $23,473 million. The distribution as a percentage of free cash flow, which is both dividends and share buybacks over their free cash flow for the current year, was 131%, and their distribution over their net income was 87%. This total distributions number of $23,473 million equates out to being approximately $17 per individual share. In this case, if you owned 100 shares of Pepsi over the course of the last 3 years, Pepsi would have returned to you $1,700 in distribution. Sadly, as this meal comes to a close, we do have to bring out the check. This meal does come with a price tag. Pepsi is frequently the target of lawsuits and allegations about its plastic use, unethical sourcing methods, and treatment of farmers. Pepsi is a company that is proud of their ESG approach, and ESG approach is just a way of saying that you try to be a sustainable company that doesn't pollute more than you can offset with carbon credits. While Pepsi is open about their impact on the environment, and they do try to be carbon neutral or positive, and they do a lot of good things for people in both the US and elsewhere in the world, they are still the target of a lot of lawsuits and controversies. When you are a company that does over $91 billion in revenue in 2023, as they mentioned here, with that primarily being packaged in plastic goods, you are going to get a certain group of people that believes that you could be doing more and you could switch to more renewable or more environmentally sound methods of storing your goods and selling your goods. But for Pepsi, as of right now, there is not an option that would be both environmentally advantageous and cheap enough for consumers to continue to be able to buy their products. Thank you for watching this video on PepsiCo. If you enjoyed, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe below. The next video in this series on American soft drink companies will be the company of Keurig Dr. Pepper. Keurig Dr. Pepper is another large multinational brand that is primarily based in the United States, and they own such brands as the ones being shown on screen right now. We will get more into the specifics of Keurig Dr. Pepper in the next video, but this will give you a quick overview of some of the things you can expect to see in the Keurig Dr. Pepper video. Again, thank you for watching and please join me in the next video on Keurig Dr. Pepper.